person, Dr. Malvika Kohli. Welcome, doctor, for this today's session.
Thank you.
And today, we have expert panelists, Dr. Nina Dani, Dr. Kalpana Sarangi, and Dr. Madhuri Agarwal, and Dr. Aparna Santanam. So I think, hope this, without making any delay further, I will hand over to Dr. Pratik. Dr. Pratik, now over to you.
Okay, thank you, Lakshmiji. It's my pleasure to welcome all the panelists today. Though, as Lakshmiji mentioned, it's a 22nd, but today's topic is entirely different. And thanks to all the experts. So they don't need introduction, but I will have a few words about them. We have moderator here with us, Madam Dr. Malvika Kohli. Is a leading aesthetic dermatologist. Madam does not need introduction. But Madam had requested that I should cut short the introduction, but still I will read one or two lines for each panelist who are here with us. Madam is recognized one of the pioneer in aesthetic dermatology, and she is a director of Skin Secrets. Has been a former post director for IMCAS India and part of various scientific committee for IMCAS Asia and board member for India Acne Alliance. So it's my pleasure to welcome you, Madam, and accepting invitation to be moderator and suggesting this very relevant topic in the current scenario. Thank you, Madam. Thank you, Dr. Madam. I would also welcome our expert panelist today, Dr. Nina Badnani, Madam. Madam, the first one to start was for our disease clinic in India. Madam has been active member of India Acne Alliance, consensus document on acne. She has done several orations in the different dermatology forum, be it in the national or international forum, and received several awards from the national scientific body, that is IADVL, and also has written several chapters in the textbook of the dermatology, and also in the clinical images in the rheumatology. We welcome you, Madam, for this panel discussion. Dr. Nina, Madam. Also, I would like to introduce our panelist, Dr. Madhuri Agarwal, Madam. She has more than 15 years of experience. She's a name reckoned with the field of dermatology and aesthetics. Has been active trainer in the art and techniques of lasers, facial regeneration, and dermal fillers. And she has been invited as a panelist by the prestigious dermatologist and plastic society globally to share her key expertise on the skin and hair care. We welcome you, Madam, for this discussion. I would like to also introduce Dr. Kalpana Sarangi, Madam. Madam has rich experience of more than 25 years, was the founder of DKS Clinic in the Mumbai, and currently heads the Department of Cosmetology at Nanavati Hospital. And she was among the first 6 ever recipient of the Pantene Shine Award, presenting two honored beauty experts who are helping other women shine. Madam has been a recipient of 2 gold medals at national level to her credit, and written numerous articles and chapters in national and international journals. We welcome you, Madam, for this expert panel discussion. I would like to also introduce today's panelist, Dr. Aparna Santanam. Madam has rich experience of more than 20 years. She's been a consultant dermatologist at PD India Hospital and Shri Hospital, best-selling author of books on wellness and beauty, and has been a recipient of gold medal in the MD course. We welcome you, Madam, for this discussion. So with this brief introduction, it's my honor to hand over this session to our moderator, Dr. Malvika Kohli. The topic is very catchy, the cosmetic consult. And we have seen all the experts most in the cosmetic workshop so far, means in the majority of the form. But considering the current scenario, this topic has been selected, and the cosmetic consult and how to strengthen the prescription. Over to you, Madam Malvika. Should I start the screen share?
I'll first give a short welcome address. So thank you very much, Cadila, for this initiative, and a warm welcome to everyone who's tuned in to this webinar on the cosmetic consult and strengthening our prescriptions. I thought this was a very relevant topic, both because the cosmetic consult forms the anchor of any sound aesthetic practice. And it is from the cosmetic consult that there is a domino effect that leads to the further aesthetic care, whether it is continuing skincare, continuing products, graduating to better ones, procedures, and developing a long-term relationship with your patients, which is singularly most important in when you're dealing with aesthetics and in continuing both the beauty and the art of aesthetics. So very warm welcome to all the delegates. Thank you so much for signing in on a hot afternoon. Have a power-packed panelists of 4 beautiful women. If you notice, we're all in blue and we're color-coded because that's the color of Mumbai, where we all come from, and this is in solidarity for the crisis that Mumbai is going through, and we're all there to be there for our Mumbaikars and all of you. So, girls, are you ready to roll with the presentation?
Yes.
All of you?
Yes.
So, Dr. Nina, if I may just say a few words, is one of the most senior panelists. She's seen the whole aesthetic curve from the very time it started. With her sound knowledge of dermatology, she's going to give us a lot of insights. Dr. Kalpana Sarangi has a fantastic academic background and also is an expert in dermatosurgery, so she's going to also share her insights. Dr. Aparna has had a chain of clinics. She's ex-head of Kaya Skin Clinic, so she has a lot of insights into skincare, into products, into how to position them and develop SOPs. So we'll come to all of those. And Dr. Madhuri Agarwal is very popular on the lecture circuit. You all must have heard her at least once by now. And she is young and bubbly, and she's going to add on her insights as well. So let's roll with the presentation, Dr. Pratik.
Yes, madam.
So let's look at, could we have the full screen, please?
Yes, madam.
So the cornerstone in designing a prescription and the cornerstone in the art of the cosmetic consult is dialogue. So when I can see the next slide, it will tell you that how do we go about defining the cosmetic consult and how do we go about defining a complete prescription. So panelists, I would like you to keep your answers crisp, short, brief, racy, because we've got a lot to talk about and I've got some very interesting slides as well. So I'd like to start with Dr. Nina. With all your experience, Dr. Nina, can you tell us how you would define the cosmetic consult? And I'd like Dr. Aparna to add to this too. Dr. Nina?
I think you're on mute.
Shall I start, Malvika?
Yeah.
Sure. Dr. Nina, can we, I'll just message you. Okay.
Unmute yourself, Dr. Nina.
Dr. Aparna, you could start.
Yeah. So I think increasingly the cosmetic consult is becoming a very, very important cornerstone of our prescription. And the way I look at it when a patient comes in is that it's divided into 3 aspects. One is the everyday routine or the everyday care that the patient has to go through. That is the cleansing, the exfoliation, the moisturizing, and the sunscreen. The second step is actually the corrective products, which are not actually drugs that we are prescribing. So very often patients are already using something for blemishes, or they started using something for acne, something that they may be attached to and they don't want to stop. Those come under the corrective cosmetic consults. And the last one is the preventive category, which is basically anti-aging, skin maintenance, where people want to use certain products which are again not drugs, but they want advice on what is the day cream that we should use, what is the night cream that we should use. The important thing about the cosmetic consult is two. One is to fit it in the armamentarium of drugs that we are prescribing and the topicals that we are prescribing to them. Where are these products going to fit in, and are we using any of the retinoids or anything? So are we double dosing them? And the second important thing is also to understand the life cycle and the lifestyle of the patient. So when you're defining the cosmetic consult, how much time do they have? Are they busy working professionals? Are they at home? How much time are they devoting to their skincare? And what type of skin do they have? Is it oily, normal, dry? Is the patient really skin involved, or is the patient a skin novice? So to someone who's never used anything, you can't prescribe like 5 products to start off with. But to someone who's already using a proper cleanser, toning, moisturizing routine, maybe they're looking for something a little bit more. So a detailed HCPC, understanding the lifestyle of the patient and understanding on which aspect of this chain they are on. Are they looking for preventive, corrective, or just maintenance is one of the most important.
Okay, great. Thank you, Dr. Aparna, that you very lucidly explained all the aspects. Dr. Nina, are you back?
I'm back. So
Can you tell us how you
Sure,
define
sure.
the cosmetic consult?
So the cosmetic consult for me is very different from the dermatology consult because the patient doesn't have a disease. So the patient has come in because they want to either they are not happy with their appearance, they want to modify whatever defects they see, or they want to enhance their appearance. So their cosmetic consult, we have to identify what the patient wants and then also explain to the patient that what would be good for them. And then it goes through what Dr. Malvika in her introduction said, your skincare, your procedures, and then it's a hand holding. Also, a dermatology consult can shift to a cosmetic consult. So your dermatology patient is very happy, her acne is cleared, or psoriasis patient, and then she starts telling you, doc, I want to remove these patches. So your dermatology consult can slowly move into a cosmetic consult. So it's like a continuous hand holding with the patient and make them more confident in you, in your ability to treat their disease as well as enhance their appearance.
Sure. So in short, what you're saying is that it's a dialogue between a seeker and a giver of aesthetic care. It's a longer consult than a simpler than a dermatological consult, which may also be lengthy if it's a complex problem. But in a cosmetic consult, one has to be relaxed, one has to be able to chat, one has to be able to relate to the patient, and you have to listen. It's very important that everything that you said comes with good listening, isn't it?
True.
So you've got to be a good listener, and you've got to sort of create a plan for the patient, which includes them. Very often, though I know what I'm supposed to do, I make the patient make the choice, because then they feel that they are very much part of the plan. It's not that they just have to follow it. So it's the art of dialoguing, and it's the art of engagement. So dialogue with your patient and engage with your patient, and then you have this patient with you for a very long time, especially if you're able to deliver the desired results. So this would encapsulate, I think, everything that both Dr. Nina and Aparna said. Dr. Kalpana, would you like to define a complete prescription? What, in your view, is a complete cosmetic consult prescription?
Yeah, like Dr. Nina and Dr. Aparna has so beautifully put it. It has to be a dialogue, and we have to, in the process of talking to the patient, we have to understand what the patient wants. At the end of it, I'm sure all of you must have faced it. At the end of it, the patient is not sure what she wants. She asks you the question, doc, what do I need? What can you do better? So that is how, while you're talking to the patient, you have to, in your mind, you have to be taking you assess the structure of the patient, the texture of the skin, the blemishes, if there are any, if there is any change in the skin, the muscle, the bone structure, and or if there's any pigmentation. So you have to assess everything while you're talking to the patient, which has to be a little prolonged than a typical dermatological consultation. And at the end of it, you can very gently suggest that, I think this is, what are you looking? You first have to ask, what are you looking at? What do you want? What is your expectation? Because sometimes what happens, I have faced it, like if you, like, out of the blue, you just suggest something, the patient might get offended. Patient might have come for something and you suggest a Botox or a filler, patient may not like it. That they might say, we are too young to do it. So then you ask them the leading question, that what do you want? What is the expectation? And depending on that, like what I typically do is I tell them to follow a particular prescription. And the prescription would consist of a restorative, a preventive, as well as a corrective. Two phases the patient, the prescription will have. So the preservative and the restorative will have a typical face wash, depending on the type of skin, probably a serum, and a moisturizer is a must, a sunscreen. And depending on the age of the patient, and if there are any ailments, like, it can be a retinoid and an anti-aging product, or an anti-acne, or a pigmentation. Depending on that, we have to add some additives to it. And if the patient is seeking, and if you feel the patient needs, then you can give some oral medication to it. So that is how.
Wonderful. Wonderful. You very nicely categorized it into, what I loved was your preventive, restorative, and corrective. Three components you must pay attention to with equal care to complete your prescription so that all angles are covered. And I think it's very important to understand what is the primary concern of the patient and the secondary concern. So your prescription lays strength on the primary concern and adds the secondary concern. So we are very clear how we are positioning the products. Would you agree, Dr.
Yeah,
Madhuri? And please
no, I
do add.
totally agree. You know, as Kalpana beautifully put it, all the three elements have to be there. And but what I would also like to add to this is that if a future plan or a roadmap to it, when we are talking of corrective, I would want to give them a brief overview of a plan which I may propose to them if they're ready for it right now, or maybe just put it in their mind that later on these are the things that I would be looking for, so that they have a longer perspective of how we are going to treat that prescription. It is not just short term, because a lot of times when initially I started, I used to give the prescription, the patient would go away and then turn up after 6 months with a concern. This was my initial days. Now with learning, I've realized that a glimpse of a roadmap does help to complete the prescription, and the patient comes back to you with more confidence.
Very, very true. I think walking them down the path of their current needs and their futuristic needs for at least 3 to 6 months, if we make a blueprint for them, definitely helps to make them realize they got to come back. And follow-up is the best way to keep your patient engaged and keep them going with you. So now, doctors, my friends, let's look at the basic skin care plans. So what I really want the panelists to really stress upon is the musts. So in each of these categories, I'll ask each one of you, tell me the musts in a brief manner so we can cover all of them quickly and move to the next slide, which is Dr. Parna. General skincare at any age. What are the musts?
For me, the musts in general skincare at any age are really two products, which is a cleanser and a sunscreen. The moisturizer, depending on the kind of skin that they come with, whether it's oily, normal, or dry, and depending on the season at which they approach me, I would really look at the moisturizer individually based on the time at which they come, the skin problem that they face, and the time of the year. But a cleanser, which is basically catering to their type of skin, and a sunscreen is an absolute must, along with a lightweight moisturizer at bedtime. And Malvika, there's just one thing I wanted to add on, which is in a cosmetic consult, I think whether we're prescribing a basic plan or an advanced one, expectation setting is extremely important so that the patient and the doctor both know what to expect at every stage of treatment and at the end of the roadmap as well.
Sure, absolutely. Dr. Nina, what would be the musts in an acne skincare plan? The musts.
So in an acne skin, we know that the barrier function is impaired, it's damaged, plus the products we are going to give them, the medications, the topical ointments, creams, are going to cause some amount of dryness and flaking. So again, for me, in an acne patient, generally I find that most of my acne patients have combination skins. There are very few patients who have really very oily seborrheic skin, maybe the ones with PCOS. So in generally what I ask my patients is to use a very gentle non-soap cleanser, to use a pH balanced face wash. If they have very seborrheic skin like a polycystic or a young teenager, then they can use your oil-free cleansers, which actually reduce the dispersion of the oil. They may reduce the production of the oil. They mattify the skin. But generally, I would ask them to use a very gentle cleanser, and they would have to use a moisturizer. And the moisturizers have to be non-comedogenic and non-acnegenic. Now, the difference is that an acnegenic moisturizer would give you in 2-3 days, suddenly the patient will call you up and say, my acne has flared up. And that is usually due to the emulsifiers in the moisturizers. While the comedogenic, you will not know till a couple of weeks, maybe 3 to 6 weeks, where you'll wonder why there are so many sort of blackheads. So the moisturizers would be generally containing D-panthenol or some sort of triglycerides which are not acnegenic or comedogenic. So they would have and a lot of these patients, I would ask them to combine a moisturizer with a sunscreen, because in an acne patient, you don't want to load them with a lot of greasy stuff. So the SPF of the moisturizer sunscreen, if they are not really outdoor people, 15 is good enough. And in the night, of course, we'll be giving them their topical applications.
How much, both Dr. Nia, how much importance do you pay to all these new patented molecules that have come out, which came to be oil control, and because they increase the cost of the product? Do you think these are really important, or you think a simple
For
light
me, yeah,
matte
absolutely.
moisturizer
For me,
is
it's
enough?
a light moisturizer generally, but sometimes we find when patients have very seborrheic skin, this may not be enough. So then we can introduce these specialized ingredients, because what they do is they prevent the spread of the oil on the skin. So it makes it appear more less oily. So only if I find the patients really require that, I may, because as you said, the cost goes very high.
And
But they
also
do have
there are also a group of,
anti-inflammatory.
there are also a group of fussy patients who want
If
something
they want
fancy.
something, of course,
Then this,
definitely.
plugs in a good, plugs it in
Absolutely.
for you.
So you have
Because
to
if you're
look at
happy.
also the economical ability of the patient, and definitely,
And
because the superior
100%.
products and the more expensive, not all of them, but a lot of them have very good tactile feel.
Yes.
They also do have anti-inflammatory things and other ingredients which also sort of work together with your acne preparations. So if
Sure.
they can afford, sure.
So, Dr. Kalpana, what are the must-haves for you when you're looking after melasma in your patient?
Yeah, in all the cases, we have to have three things basic, that is a face wash, a moisturizer, and a sunscreen. And for my face wash, if suppose the patient has an oily skin, I prefer a face wash which has a glycolic acid in it. So, it will be a short contact exfoliant sort of thing. And if the patient has oily skin, if he has a dry skin, then I would go for a lipid based cleanser. Then after that, I would go for a serum, probably a vitamin C serum, and then a depigmenting cream. And I don't normally go for hydroquinone. I would prefer a arbutin, a kojic acid, or azelaic acid, or a glycolic acid based depigmenting cream, a mild one, followed by sunscreen, depending on the patient's nature of work. Like if the patient is mostly indoors, then 30 SPF. If a patient is going outdoors, then ranging from 30 to 50 SPF. And after that, in the night, again, I repeat the same cream, the depigmenting cream, and on the spots, on the pigmented spots, I would like to give a retinoid or a glycolic acid of 6% glycolic acid for the spots, or a yellow peel on twice in a week. I would do that. And along with it, I would like to give some vitamins, like a vitamin C, and probably like a glutathione tablet or something like that.
So you complete the prescription.
Yeah.
But your top choice is not hydroquinone, nor is mine. And so I just wanted to know, Dr. Neena, is your top choice hydroquinone, and Dr. Aparna, or would you stay away with all the new literature coming out?
I
Just
like
yes or no?
tranexamic acid for my melasma patients, and of course
And-
good sunscreen.
And Dr. Aparna, what do you like hydroquinone? Do you use it?
No, I use it very sparingly. I do like tranexamic acid, tetrahydrocurcumin, and a sunscreen. But there are a certain group of patients where I judiciously use hydroquinone only under strict medical supervision, especially those who are.
You're not very audible, Dr. Aparna. A little louder.
There are a certain group of patients in whom I
perfect.
use hydroquinone, but that is usually under strict medical supervision. It's not my first drug of choice. I do prefer tranexamic acid or tetrahydrocurcumin, both of which have given good results.
Although the standard of care is your triple combination, it's a gold standard triple combination for melasma.
Which does
But
work in certain patients who are
works very well.
Treatments and under complete strict medical supervision. So I do use that judiciously as well.
Sure. So, Dr. Madhuri, you could round it off your view on melasma and then tell us about periorbital pigmentation.
So I will go with Dr. Aparna. I use a lot of tetrahydrocurcumin. I also use azelaic acid in my prescription, and hydroquinone again is not a first choice unless it is really required with certain patients. That also a very short course. So that's I think more or less same as what others are doing. Periorbital pigmentation is honestly very challenging because it's an area which is very sensitive. So, and again, the cost factor comes in and the compliance, because if you give a product for a face and an eye, and then, so patients sometimes don't do it religiously, regularly. I
And
like
their
to,
expectations may be very high also.
exactly.
So they
So
drop
I'm
out very fast.
exactly. So I'm not a big fan of advocating eye cream unless the patient is really insistent. I like to go with my face products. So like in the morning, my vitamin C serum with ferulic and hyaluronic is really good for eye area also. So when it's, and generally these are patients who are above, most of them are youngsters. Okay. So, you know, they have high expectations. So that's why my eye cream in this, especially the younger age group, is not a preference. I use my face serums on around the eyes. I tell my patients to apply it around the eyes. Sunscreen is a must, and physical blockers like your sunglasses, your hats. Those are my choice of protection treatment. And at night, I would again add a mild hyaluronic with retinol, because we have got good formulations now. So I like to use a little bit of retinol and, if possible, a little bit of hyaluronic and peptides, which are there right now. So these are my preferred combinations when I'm looking at periorbital pigmentation. And again, my prescription evolves with age, because in the younger age group you have a different kind of treatment modality, whereas in older group there's an aging component added. So you also have to add those factors when you're looking at that age.
True. So really, what just to come to a synopsis of this slide, general skincare would be cleanser, sunscreen, moisturizer, maybe vitamin C serum. In some cases, of nowadays, you're almost giving it to everybody. Acne would be a good cleanser, not too drying, effectively removes grease, but doesn't have to be too harsh. A moisturizer today has become a must because of the barrier dysfunction. And then your actives are there. You should also give a sunscreen, but the SPF doesn't need to be too high. In melasma, the SPF needs to be 30 to 50, with probably a combination sunscreen. We'll come to that in the later slides. With a lightener, a strong message that hydroquinone is not our first choice, at least in this webinar. Hydroquinone is not our first choice, except in and triple combination, except in select cases. In periorbital pigmentation, vitamin K, caffeine, all these, hyaluronic acid, good when there's a vascular issue. If there's a laxity issue, then retinol. And if there's a pigmentary issue, vitamin C, and glabridin, licorice, arbutin, all these could help. Barrier dysfunction, I think, also comes up in rosacea, comes up in those with a history of atopy. So do you think, panelists, that here in these situations of rosacea and atopy, moisturizers which are paraben-free, perfume-free, phthalate-free, and this whole new genre that has come up are of value, or you think just a regular simple moisturizer still works for barrier dysfunction? There are the newer ones with aquaporin and so many other, hydrating molecules. You think that they really do work? Okay, Dr. Neena, you can start.
Okay, so in all these conditions where barrier repair is required, I think the very important barrier repair is, of course, your moisturizer, but it can have certain things which are repair peptides or hyaluronic acid, and in the atopies you can have squalene, you can have ceramides. So these are all the ingredients which should be useful for those sort of skins.
So cholesterol, ceramide,
and then the other
acid,
thing
right?
is you can also have your moisturizers containing niacinamide also, because that's an anti-inflammatory. So it will depend on what you're dealing with.
Okay, let's come to anti-aging, Dr. Madhuri. What are the, and Dr. Kalpana, you could add here, what are the basic must-haves in anti-aging? Like hydroquinone, which is a gold standard for melasma, would you say retinol and its retinoids and its derivatives are still the gold standard?
Yes.
And do you use them in every patient in different strengths and acceptability?
So for me, I divide my patient as a younger age group is preventive and an older age group is definitely corrective. And as Kalpana mentioned, restorative. So for preventive, I use, for me, retinol is still the gold standard in a younger age group. So when I say late 25s, I start with a lower percentage, or I will start with a regular strength retinol, but lesser frequency, say twice a week. And definitely for me, sunscreen is the best anti-age at all age groups. So sunscreen is mandatory ready application for all of them. Then your vitamin C again is a fantastic antioxidant and a free radical quencher. So you need to have that in your thing. And post 30s, I would add on things like even growth factors, peptides. We have formulations again containing, again, pigmentation is a very huge component of aging. So there I'll add on creams containing kojic and licorice and niacinamide in the mornings also if required. Depending on how the patient is, coming to me. So that's how I will classify a preventive and a corrective prescription, and also the budget of the patient. That's again very important to me, because sometimes you write 4 products, and I honestly don't believe a lot of patients come to me with this 10-step Korean thing. I really don't believe in that. One, because of the time, and second, the cost and the efficacy is very questionable. So I like to stick to, if it's a male patient for anti-aging, a multi-functional product, one product in the morning and one in the night. If it's female who love to do 2-3 products, then maybe a serum. If it's oily skin, an essence along with a sunscreen instead of a serum. And at night, a hard-working product which will work on the anti-aging, containing retinols and peptides and growth factors. So that's how I would classify my anti-aging prescription.
Wonderful.
Yeah,
Dr.
I'd
Kalpana,
like
would
to
you
go
to
with
add
what
to this?
Madhuri said. She's already explained beautifully. I add a lot of hyaluronic acid also for the hydration of the skin, peptides and growth factors like she mentioned. And in the morning, I give a vitamin C, and in the evening, I definitely give a retinol. And what I do, I normally dilute my retinol and give it to them. And depending on the age of the patient, if it's a younger patient, the dilution is more, and an older patient, it becomes less proportionate. So that is how I go about.
Okay.
Also, one more thing.
Wonderful.
And
So
one more thing in
once
anti-aging,
again,
I also like to add some omega-3 fatty acid supplements, because that also, and Q10, because these again I find wonderful molecules when we are looking at an anti-aging patient, especially at an older age group. So Q10 again is a favorite in these prescriptions.
Sure.
Can I also add something?
Yes, sure.
Yeah. So if a patient's budget is very small and you want to do a good anti-aging, tretinoin is good as an anti-aging, because all these retinols, although they are less irritant, they finally get converted in the same way as your retinoic acid. So in a person with a budget constraint, you can actually use what we are using for acne. We can use tretinoin cream. Maybe you can dilute it with a little moisturizer, but that would be one of the options for anti-aging in a budget constraint.
I completely agree. We don't have to get fancy. And there was a question that flashed by about, how important it is for having these fragrance-free products, etc. I think they have a role to play in sensitive skin, maybe atopic skin, certain type of patient group, also dysmorphophobia patients. But I think you can have a very good basic skincare without having fancy creams, which are expensive, then they're not maintainable. Not everything has to be paraben free, fragrance free. I think all the panelists will agree. We'll go to the next slide. We have some very interesting points over here, which was, you talked about the male skin, and the male skin essentially has really now come into focus. And it's different because it produces more sebaceous eccrine and apocrine secretions in the female skin. And today, the market for the male cosmeceuticals has really gone up. And men also want to moisturize. Men also want to use a sunscreen. And of course, for facial hair removal, today they're coming for hair removal. I think that's a top procedure in men. So, like Dr. Madhuri pointed out, simple regimes, multi-purpose, one in the morning, one at night. Say moisturizer, sunscreen in the morning, and at night, brightener with a little retinol or a peptide with a little hyaluronic acid. I think maybe a dash of vitamin C, they're good to go. Would you all agree that men like it simple, and they are also sort of keen on also combining their products with procedures, and some just want to have something that they can do for 6 months? Would you all agree that this is how usually men like to work with their skins?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, great. Next point, next slide, please, Dr. Pratik. Let's go to some special areas which our patients today are very concerned about. Dr. Kalpana, on dark lips.
Yeah.
Can you just
Yeah.
tell us how you approach
See, first
it
and foremost,
briefly?
the most important thing about,
And you can cover the perioral area as well.
so like we have to elicit what is the cause of dark lips. It could be genetic, it could be because of some user products, allergic contact dermatitis, it could be a balm, or it could be a lipstick. So usually the long stay lipsticks and the dark colored lipstick, they have zinc and ferrous in it, so that causes pigmentation. And long stay, that matte lipstick also does cause dark lips. Too much of caffeine, too much of hot drinks and smoking,
Smoking.
and your
Lead, also lead and epoxy
epoxy
resins in
resins
products.
in the lipsticks.
Lead.
So creamy based, a more bland color lipstick is preferable. And secondly, the toothpaste also, or oral, people have a habit of licking their lips frequently. So all these things has to be, and sun exposure also. Like sun exposure, the lower lip gets really dark because of sun exposure. So these things has to be excluded. And then what you can do is you can address the cause. I mean, eliminate the cause, treat the cause, and then use a good sunscreen based lip balm, and keep the lip, it should contain a vitamin E. Vitamin E really hydrates the skin of the lips. And you can use, if you want, like treatment wise, to lighten them, you can use a peel, you can use Q-Stitch ND-Ag followed by vitamin C, you can do lip filler also. So these are the things which you can do to take care of the dark lips. And secondly, you can perioral dermatitis or perioral dryness or pigmentation is also could be because of the toothpaste. And usually the fluoride based toothpaste does cause this sort of iodine and fluoride based toothpaste. You have to change the toothpaste and address this area by giving a very low mild dose, mild potency steroid, or you can give tacrolimus or primacolimus to treat this area. And advise the patient to
Sure.
use
And
a
sometimes,
sunscreen every 4 hourly, as a sunscreen based lip balm.
and sometimes it's important to differentiate seborrheic melanosis, acanthosis nigricans, and PDLs from actinic friction contact. You know, it becomes sometimes a little difficult to differentiate these areas. Sometimes I use dermoscopy here, and I find dermoscopy can help sometimes to differentiate. And atopics also very prone to this perioral and lip issues, isn't it? And their tacrolimus, primacolimus works well.
So
let's talk.
one
Yes.
thing I wanted to ask is, a lot of patients now in lockdown will ask you about lip scrubs and lip masks, because that's very freely available. So I wanted to ask your view on, do you promote it? Do you say yes to it? Or do you really don't, discourage it?
I think if they're already using a lip balm, if they're with a sunscreen, if they're already using a good lip balm at night, if they are don't have any of the factors that were discussed earlier, then doing one of these is fine. But then you never know the fragrance, you never know how long they're going to keep it on. So there are risks.
Yes.
There are risks. I mean, simple bleach can. So many of my patients have sent me photographs of waxing themselves in the lockdown period and coming up with PIH and perioral dermatitis and this, contact dermatitis. So all this is going on. So we have to give. We can't discourage them, but probably we should give them very firm instructions.
The rationale behind out.
The rationale behind it and firm instructions. I think firm instructions are very important. So, Dr. Nina, would you like to tell us about how you manage the neck and decolletage? What are your favorite what are your favorite agents and approach?
So the important thing about the neck and the decolletage, luckily, compared to the Caucasian skins, the Indian necks and decolletage don't get that wrinkly old look, while we see that in even 40s in the Caucasians. So the important thing about the neck and decolletage is, it's like your hands and feet. You ignore everything. You just concentrate on your face. So whatever you're doing on your face, you have to extend it to your neck and decolletage. If you're lucky to keep your neck, your decolletage area totally blocked away from ultraviolet light, you'll be surprised that there's absolutely no aging taking place. So for the neck, you need moisturizers which contain good humectants. So you can use moisturizers with hyaluronic acid. You can use them with ceramides, with your growth factors, your peptides. Retinol you could use, but I would say a cosmeceutical retinoid, not tretinoin. And of course, very important is that as you're putting your sunscreen on your face, you need to put it on your neck And if your décolletage is open all the time, you need to protect yourself. So you need to do a lot of care of your neck and décolletage the same way as you do of your face.
I agree. I think extending your vitamin C, which you're putting on your face to your neck, especially if it
It's
has to do with
sometimes the
an
vitamin C
hyaluronic
stings, you know, when it goes
irritates,
on the
yes,
neck.
yes.
So,
So I tell them to put the remnants, which is on their
yeah,
fingers, on the neck, not to specially apply
correct.
a whole load of it on the neck. And I think also Matrixyl 3000,
Yes,
Genistin and soy at night, along with a good rich moisturizer, helps. And then whatever they put on their neck and décolletage, they can apply to their hands as well. But I know that Dr. Madhuri's favorite topic is hands. So would you like to tell us something more that you do?
So for hands, I would like to see whether it is textural changes like pigmentation, unevenness, or it is volume loss, you know, because some people, because of the atopy, have a lot of issues, you know, like I myself had atopy, so I can see those changes. So that's the segregation I do. If it's just pigmentation, then things like vitamin C or kojic, you have a lot of, plant extracts nowadays with peptides and, you know, the so-called growth factors. So the only problem with creams applications is the compliance. Patients expect result within 15 days, which doesn't happen. You have to be continuous with it. And moisturizing, again, now with the lockdown, a lot of patients are, I'm sure, calling all of you all saying it's drying and hand dermatitis is very common. So that's the reason moisturizing for me is the staple. Whatever your age is, I recommend a good thick moisturizer with the butters, with hyaluronic if possible, because again hyaluronic is a thick molecule, so you don't have good preparations with it in India, unfortunately. Then the other thing is, you know, if you have some if you have a volume area, then obviously you would need to go for treatments like fillers and textural when
Skin
it opens
boosters,
skin boosters. And
I
then for
found even
texture,
derma roller with skin booster
Yeah.
good,
yeah.
and
So
the Q switch, and the Q
I
switch
like to,
also.
yeah,
Switch.
the Q switch, the derma roller, even the resurfacing lasers.
the fractional.
Yes, the fraction lasers with I like to do a lot of growth factor PRP injections also. The only thing is they are painful, so you have to be really aligning your
That
patients
of
about
course,
it.
that is if they wish to.
So
I
these
find
are the spectrum of
I also
treatments.
find twice a week if you put a retinol, a
Yeah.
mild retinol, you know, the one that you use for the peri-orbital area and peri-oral area. Those retinols on the hands twice a week do also help
Yes.
because it's thinner skin and it's frequently washed and exposed.
So retinol with
So
Q10
that
again,
also,
you know, the retinol Q10 combination
yeah.
really helps when you put it.
Yeah, true, but you know, it adds the expense of even retinol alone, retinaldehyde. This is also useful. So let's go to another.
Sorry, Madhuri, I just wanted to add one thing about the hands. I think
Yeah, sure.
in this lockdown period, due to the COVID infection, we're all washing our hands a lot more, and so are our patients, and using a lot more sanitizer. So just a simple tip I give my patients is next to their hand wash to keep a moisturizer at all points of time. So
Yeah.
every time they wash their hands or sanitize, to moisturize immediately. Because
Sure.
even people who otherwise don't have dry skin are complaining of a lot more wrinkling and dryness of the hands.
Of course.
Yeah.
Undoubtedly. And they need to do that 20-second rule of hand washing. So it's quite vigorous.
So it's
So
quite,
you're right.
yeah, it's quite drying on the skin. So to moisturize immediately every time you wash your hands is a good habit to inculcate.
Sure. So now we go for what works for hair. Here, my suggestion would be that I'm going to ask you for the different conditions what whether you use this molecule or not. So let's start with AGA, androgenetic alopecia. Dr. Madhuri, do you always use minoxidil? Yes or no?
No, not really. I use minoxidil more in youngsters, and I prefer the alcohol-free or less alcohol-free preparations. For elderly or mature patients above 30, I don't like to use minoxidil for the simple purpose it's very drying and they have a lot of expectations. So I like to do my treatments and supplements, and if required, add on peptide because you've got good peptide-based solutions. So I personally don't like minoxidil for AGA too much.
Okay. Dr. Nina, what's your take on minoxidil with finasteride combinations?
I use minoxidil in all my females, whether they have androgenetic alopecia or they have female pattern hair loss, because I find that's the only thing which really works. Besides, if they have androgenetic alopecia, you treat them you investigate them, find out the cause, and you treat them with systemic agents. But I
Yes.
find minoxidil is the go-to for all my cases. In some of them, I add the ones which have peptides, but I will always combine with the minoxidil. And what was that question you asked me?
Finasteride and
Finasteride.
topical
So
finasteride.
if the patient has androgenetic alopecia, yes, I do combine it, minoxidil with finasteride. But there's always a discussion about how effective it is. But I find that in my patients, when I combine it, I find that there is definitely a benefit over using just a pure minoxidil.
Yes. So I like to do the combination, and I find it more better than just using a pure minoxidil. I don't really use only minoxidil solitary.
But
Always
we
in
need more
combination.
studies to show.
Yeah.
So I agree with Nina too. I think I use minoxidil in almost every female pattern hair loss patient, and also chronic telogen effluvium. I also do use a lot of minoxidil in male patients unless they display an intolerance to it or they develop some side effects. I do use it as the gold standard because at least in my experience I found that in the topicals it gives the best results, and in male AGA combining with finasteride as the first line still works best.
I also agree with all of them, but I use a combination. I use a peptide in the morning and I use the minoxidil 2% in the night. And I prefer to use a non-alcohol based minoxidil.
Dr. Pratiha, please unmute Dr. Malvika.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, she's muted again.
We can't hear you, Malvika.
Dr. Pratik, you have to unmute her.
Yeah,
Okay.
done.
Okay. So yeah. So would all of you agree that peptides and acetyl peptide, bioquinin, caffeine, and a whole host of other cosmeceutical agents for hair have definitely helped the textural concerns? We're not talking about PRP and all that. We're talking about only cosmeceutical agents. Would you say that you have had huge benefits? I'll share to say that I think my patients who get good results with minoxidil are the ones who are using peptides because they like using peptides, and because they're more compliant because of the peptides, they end up using the minoxidil and or with or without finasteride. And my strategy is to first start the cosmeceutical agents, wait 3 weeks, and then add the minoxidil so that there's no initial hair loss. In fact, the initial hair loss slows down a bit, maybe even after 6 weeks. And then when I add the minoxidil, I find that the patients are very happy to use both. Otherwise, that initial use of minoxidil, which I also am quite sparingly writing nowadays, I'm not very fond of writing minoxidil as my first line. I find that then the acceptability of minoxidil in those who have female pattern hair loss especially, and even in the males, becomes far more acceptable.
The only problem with the peptides is if you're using it in a female who has androgenetic alopecia, the peptides tend to be quite sticky on the scalp. And these patients already have very seborrheic scalps. So some of them can't tolerate that stickiness. So I find that when I mix them with the minoxidil, they seem to be tolerating it better because it sort of neutralizes the greasiness of the peptides.
There are some ready to use with the minoxidil and the peptides also nowadays. And would you say that, what would you think about nowadays are these really good new tar-based shampoos? Do you think that they really help with scalp seborrhea and folliculitis? I've had wonderful results with the newer ones, with the newer formulations.
I agree.
Which are not so drying at all. I think it's a place for them, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. I agree with Nina that stickiness is a big problem because already you have volume loss. And if you flatten the hair and make it sticky, then you get even more upset. So I still feel that combining with minoxidil works better than using the standalone.
Sure. So let's go to the next slide, and that is on. Dr. Pratik, can we have the next slide, please? You know, all of you did mention about creating a roadmap in which you will position products for 3 to 6 months as your plan. Initial benefits we tell our patients you will see at about as early as 2, maybe takes 4 to 6 weeks. I think we change our products at around 8 to 12 weeks. Once the first set gets over and they're ready to use and you want to upgrade, I like to tell them I'm going to upgrade your products around 8 weeks. So that's when most tubes and jars come to an end. This also helps to generate more interest and improves their compliance. We talked about the preventive and corrective role. And do you find that are you in your teleconsults and virtual consults today using the products and rotating them and using them sequentially as also part of priming to the time when lockdown ends, procedures will start? If you already started your clinic and patients are asking for procedures, are you pushing back some procedures that you can't do without a mask by lengthening a bit of priming, say another 4 weeks, 8 weeks, and judiciously adding some more products to strengthen the prescription and keep the patients with you? Do you think this is a good strategy?
It is. I agree with you, Malvika. Because
Wonderful.
right now our hands are tied. We can't do any procedure. And patients are looking for some. They are also scared to come to do any procedure. So it is a win-win situation for both of us. And we have to fortify our prescription and add a little more and prime the skin and prepare them and tell them this will help you till we can do your procedure. So that keeps them going, and that keeps their confidence in us also.
Yes.
And simultaneously they get better results.
Yeah,
And also, I feel that by doing this, those who have already paid for a package and have a gap between their earlier sessions until they can do their next, you're reassuring them that, we try to we are keeping the effect going and getting you ready so that you can complete your packages. And of course, how you will complete the package is another ball game which we don't want to discuss here. But it makes them feel that you're concerned about them and that you are considering an onward plan for them. So it increases their confidence in you.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think the bonus which we as physicians are having, especially dealing with pigmentary problems, is that with this lockdown, a lot of the pigmentary problems are coming down. And I think they'll be very well prepared, very well prepared for the pigmentation procedures.
The mask effect.
Yes.
Yeah, true. We'll now go to the next slide, in which I'd like to touch upon scoring with your patients. Alas, now there was no IPL this year, but last year, this helicopter shot was the finisher. Now, how do we get that winning touch to our prescription? So it is all about reading your patient. Like all of you rightly discussed in the beginning, should it be an all-in-one product or should it be layering? So, Dr. Aparna,
so
are you a proponent for all-in-one or are you a proponent for layering? Or do you just customize it according to the patient?
I think there is no one size fits all, and depending on the patient, the situation they come in, especially the weather, in weather like this, layering is a complete, most patients just balk at it because they don't want to put multiple things on their face. But it also depends on what they come in with, what their current status of skincare product usage is. If someone's already using 4 products, they're going to be more open to even adding on one more or changing one to another. But if someone is using nothing, saying, my skin is so oily, just give me one thing that will work for it, you have to customize it that way. I think it's also important to explain to patients, especially because they're far more engaged with their skincare these days, that every product you add on, what the very specific and pertinent benefit is. So it's no longer I'm prescribing it and you use it. Each product, why it works differently, what is the order in which you put the products, when do you put the serum on, why are you also recommending a cream on top of the serum? If we explain clearly and there is a clear need for it, patients are willing to be compliant. There are always those patients who want to use just one thing and then you just say, okay, use your cleanser and your sunscreen, and at night use your anti-aging cream. But I think it is important to customize, Malvika. I don't think a one size fits all really works in this category.
So as I look at it, I completely agree with you, but this involves a long conversation, which sometimes, is not possible on a busy day. So, because now post-lockdown, we don't know, we'll have much more time with our patients per consult, but, in the earlier days. So what I now have categorized roughly is that the traditionalist patient will like an all-in-one. And a millennial type of patient likes layering because there's so much on Instagram, Koreans, this, that, Japanese, that they follow. So I find that the millennials love layering and the traditionalists like something simple and doable, sustainable, give it to them for 3-6 months, they're happy. Whereas the millennials every 2 months want to come and tweak their prescriptions a bit. Would you agree,
Yeah,
Dr.
I
Madhuri?
agree totally. That's why I asked you about, there's so much about different masks and different serums and essence and a whole, lot of it. Plethora is there. So,
Yeah, we're coming to
yeah.
that. We're coming to that. Could I have the next slide, please? In which I'd like to talk about a bit on the history so far of cosmeceuticals. As we remember it, in the 60s, it was the whole concept of photo damage came up. And then in the 70s was the effect of AHAs. In the 80s, it was Ligmund who talked about topical retinoic acid, and it was like breakthrough. In the 90s, it was again AHAs for aging and photo-aging changes. And then the antioxidants with topical C and E made a huge burst in the 2000s. And I think that's when we were all, in the upward swing of aesthetics and skincare. In the 2010s came in the topical retinoic acid derivatives, took another turn with newer, less irritating derivatives. From 2010 to 2020, as we stand today, would one of you like to tell me what has made a huge surge in cosmeceuticals? Which is the group which you feel has made a huge impact?
I think the peptides and the growth factors, they have made
Absolutely.
a huge impact because they are better tactile advantage. Secondly, they have made the matrikine-like peptides, which have smaller molecular weight, and so the penetration is effective. And we also have these skin boosters. So I think these have made the biggest impact now in the last
and also combination
formulations.
These would be the main things, right?
And botanicals
I
also,
agree.
botanicals also have come up
Absolutely.
a big way in the last 10 years.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's go to the next slide, in which I want to I've highlighted, there are 5 points out here. I'll just read it out quickly, that you'll all agree with me, cleansers and moisturizers are the backbone of any therapeutic regimen. The whole idea of using any device which is to exfoliate is to improve skin smoothness and the light reflex. Cleansers, pH is important. The rest depends on the skin type, but pH balance is important. And in the skin lightening cosmeceuticals, you could see even from the panel discussion, viewers, that there has been a shift away from hydroquinone and licorice, and arbutin, vitamin C are more popular. And in the anti-aging cosmeceuticals of peptides, this is exactly what we've discussed in the last almost hour. This is the synopsis of what we've discussed, and you can see that this is the trend that is being seen. And this is also in 2019. This is from an article in 2019, as recent, and this is exactly what we've discussed in the last 1 hour. So I have to say that we're pretty updated, and we've got all our concepts right. Great. Let's go to the next slide, in which we actually did come across male skin versus female skin earlier. I think that the one important thing to remember, this slide should have come earlier, but I'll just cover it, is that the rate of collagen loss in a female and male is the same, but the subcutaneous fat goes more in a female, less in a male. That's why women come earlier to seek treatment. And that is why in men, you can start with a good cosmeceutical regimen, and you can probably start looking at subcutaneous fat replacement with fillers even a little later, whereas women seem to need fillers earlier. That's all I wanted to point out in this slide. Next slide, please. There was a question on collagen shots. We'll come to that. And we can skip this slide. We can skip this slide. We have lots more to discuss. So I think what we've all been talking about is mixing and matching. I think all of us want to avoid heavily loaded prescriptions, and we're all very cognitive of product cost and not overburdening our patients. So may I give all of you an example, and could you tell me if you agree? Is that if I find that the primary concern of a patient in front of me is contact sensitive irritation, sensitive skin, patient has already moved around to a lot of doctors, has chronic problems, whether it's acne, whether it's pigmentation, or a dissatisfied patient, then I'll keep my basic products, I'll make them spend a little more on those, because once those appeal, they're always willing to do more. And my secondary concerns, I will slowly build that up. However, if the patient already has a good basic line, then I'm happy to add 1 or 2 products which are for their secondary concerns, which for them may be their primary concerns, and make them spend a little more. And that's the way I balance my prescription. Would you agree that that works?
Agreed.
Yeah, agreed,
Yeah.
agreed.
So I think this is how we can give them a prescription, because I'll tell you what is important about this point according to me, listeners, is that our delegates, is that if you may know all the products, you can write all of them. There's nothing to stop us. But when they go out and they start either at your pharmacy or when they go down to their own chemist, they start buying it, they may drop one product and they don't know which one to drop. And then they'll come back and say the prescription didn't work. Now, you may not have realized that they dropped the product till you go into the details of asking them. Or you wrote a better sunscreen, they're still using their earlier sunscreen. And you wanted a change in the sunscreen as well. So I think it's important to identify which is the product which is going to make the maximum difference and make them spend the most on that. And the other products you can slowly add on as they come back to you. And some of the earlier products, if they were using, are fine. There's no need to change the entire prescription. Would you agree?
Agree.
One thing I'd like to add, like Nina has already mentioned, which is a very good take-home message for all, is like, mostly the most expensive product is the night cream, the anti-aging cream. But if you mix retinol, like, the retinol A or whatever we are using for acne, 1 part of that and 6 part or 8 parts of any basic like whitening cream which we have or low end, it will give equally good result if the patient is willing. And we can cut down on the cost of we can give them the basic face wash because it's a short contact. We needn't go very expensive on the face wash. So these 2 things we can juggle around, and the rest we have to be more specific.
And then you can use a nice vitamin C serum instead, or a better sunscreen instead. Okay, so now let's start with some of our favorites. Okay, girls. So, which is your favorite sunscreen combination, Dr. Madhuri?
So obviously broad spectrum, UVA, UVB. And I like to add a lot of physical filters with zinc oxide and titanium dioxide, because especially with indoors and screen time, that's where your physical filters help. Your UVA and UVB component do not really take care of it, the blue light. So that's the combination that I really prefer. And then according to the skin type, the formulation, whether gel or moisturizing, I'll pick it and then suggest to them.
Dr. Kalpana, what's your take on ferric oxide in a sunscreen?
Ferric oxide in a sunscreen, I don't use it much. But yes, I use a product. I use, like Madhuri said, I use both a broad spectrum UVA, UV and a physical zinc oxide and titanium dioxide. Yeah, but I like to, one of my favorite product is Glaberidin, which is a derivative of Licorise, which is used in a particular couple of sunscreens, which gives a anti-pigment-free effect. So I use a lot of that.
I just wanted to add something here, that there have been a couple of recent studies which show that there's some absorption of avobenzone and oxybenzone in the blood from sunscreens that are used. They still don't know whether this absorption has any long-term implication. The studies are still underway. So off late, when I pick a sunscreen combination, I avoid these ingredients. Look for sunscreens with more physical filters, which, like Madhuri says, have a whole spectrum sunscreen effect, because increasingly we're finding that visible light and infrared radiation also have an effect on the skin. So earlier we were looking at UVA, UVB. Now it appears like we have to look at visible light as well as infrared spectrum. So a physical filter, which is a micronized physical filter, seems to be the way to go.
Can I add something?
Yeah.
Yes, it's your turn.
Okay. So one of the things I wanted to add on is that if you have a patient of lichen planus pigmentosa, of frontal fibrosing alopecia, okay, they have found studies that they are suspecting sunscreens, and the sunscreens containing titanium dioxide. So now when I look for sunscreens, I make sure that they don't contain titanium dioxide for whatever it's worth. And whatever sunscreen I choose, it has to have ferric chloride in it as a tint, because matched studies have shown that sunscreens which even have Mexoryl or Tinosorb with ferric chloride work better than the sunscreens which don't have ferric chloride. So for me, ferric oxide. So for that is the most important combination which I would use in a sunscreen.
Sure. And what's your take on the addition of vitamin C to a sunscreen?
I would rather use vitamin C separate
I agree.
because
I'd
it's,
rather- if I
vitamin
have
C
to
is
layer-
very unstable.
Unstable. Yeah.
And especially
Exactly.
in a cream formulation, it depends on the pH of the cream. So I wouldn't use a sunscreen. It would just add to the cost.
And also vitamin
And
C, you would
what's your take on silicone-based sunscreens?
I
Yeah.
think they're very good because they are easy to spread. They are not so sticky. So silicone is now becoming very popular in a lot of products, which are even moisturizers, creams.
And
Textural
compliance
benefits.
is also very good, especially men and people, those who have a beard and acne prone skin, they prefer a silicone based sunscreen.
In fact, I would say that if a sunscreen is simple, but the patient likes it, maybe just in the simple addition of silicone, and they use it regularly 2-3 times a day, is more effective than having a fancy sunscreen with lots of ingredients and this
Yeah,
very high
true.
touted SPF. It's the compliance which is key, isn't it?
And sometimes you find that the patient cannot tolerate any sunscreen. They feel very sticky. So then if they just use a BB cream, which has a combination of the moisturizer, it has an antioxidant, it has a tint in it, that would serve as a good sunscreen, especially for the younger people.
Even high density
Yes.
makeup works as both a cosmetic camouflage as well as it gives photoprotection as good old talc
So
powder
that's what I
in the good
suggest for
old days.
patients, especially females who use makeup and they say it's not feasible to reapply the sunscreen. I tell them to pick these powders with SPF or a makeup,
Right.
powder with SPF and
Mineralized
just,
makeup.
dab it on.
Mineralized
Exactly.
And
makeup
of
is
course,
useful.
physical measures, reinforcing using
Yeah.
umbrellas, caps, big goggles, because
Nobody wears that. Nobody does caps and umbrellas. Goggles, yes. Goggles are very
Goggles
fashionable.
and
So
it really
people will
helps
do that.
around the eye area because that's a much neglected area.
Exactly.
And
exactly.
also with so
Okay.
much research coming up on, we don't even know what is safe, what is not safe. Every day it's changing. Going back to simple things, I think. Really.
Also, one more thing with sunscreens was that some of the sunscreen, like Aparna said, have estrogenic effects.
Yes.
So they are still not
EDCs.
sure.
You're talking about the EDC, endocrine disrupting
Right.
chemicals. and
So they
including
found that
octocrylene,
the
isn't it?
avobenzone possibly.
Yes.
Yeah, octocrylene as well.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. So what about soy in a sunscreen? What about sunscreen come moisturizer? Again, would you prefer to separate this out? Dedicated sunscreen, minimum antioxidants, keep the sunscreen good. Let the ingredients of the sunscreen be a good blend, and leave all the fancy things out of
Absolutely.
Yeah.
it. Okay. Favorite peptides?
I like Matrix Cell 2000. I think it works really well,
Yeah.
Yes.
for the
Yes.
patient.
Yeah, and even Geniston
Even
Geniston.
works well.
And
Okay.
Q10.
We'll come to the nutraceuticals in a couple of slides. Can we move on? Yes. So, no. Can we go back to the previous slide? We did talk about how cosmeceuticals can help you tide over procedural delay due to COVID. Product lines and kits, are they really effective or only expensive? And so doctors, do you agree that if somebody really wants to do something dramatic and have a wow effect, then these product lines, the skin transformation kits, and the integrated take-home products are worth it? But for somebody who's not looking for a dramatic wow, then they don't have to spend so much. Is that how you look at it?
True.
Yeah, I agree.
And we talked about the dispensing from your pharmacy if you have one in your clinic. Are you, for those of you who are open, are you dispensing from your pharmacy? Have you started?
No, not yet.
Okay, fine. Let's go to the next slide. In which, let's talk about some of the newer topical preparation. I think niacinamide has been covered, tranexamic has been covered, curcumin, growth factor, skin boosters. I want to ask you about mandelic acid. I want to ask you about topical mandelic acid, topical glutathione, and your take on mequinol. These three. So mandelic acid, Dr.
I think
Kalpana?
10% mandelic acid is available now, and it's quite economical also. And mandelic acid being a larger molecule, the penetration is less than glycolic or lactic acid, so irritation is less, and it's very good. It is as comparable, I would say, to hydroquinone if used on a longer time, and it's safe also to be used along with the sunscreen. It's very good. And Mandelic has been a hot favorite. I think yours, it's also your hot favorite, Malvika.
It is.
Yeah.
It is. It is.
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah.
Dr. Aparna, on
I like
glutathione,
mandelic acid and azelaic acid both. I use both of
can you
them.
talk a little louder?
I like mandelic and azelaic both. I think they're both very effective and fairly safe. Azelaic acid I also like to use in rosacea patients judiciously because they get good results without too many side effects that retinoic acid can give. I think most of these newer age topical preparations are definitely gentler on the skin. They tend to have better penetration. Many of them are lipophilic, so they tend to work better in acne patients, and I'm quite fond of using them in various combinations.
Sure. Dr. Madhuri, do you use sublingual glutathione?
I don't like the topical glutathione because I don't find it honestly very effective.
Yeah.
So I prefer the oral.
Even around the periorbital area, you find glutathione with niacinamide and all
so
those.
then we don't know what is
peptides
actually working, because then pure solitary glutathione honestly is not very effective topically. Orally I do prefer, and sublingual again is a favorite because better absorption, better results. So I prefer any, so that's the reason. The only thing is the patients find it a little difficult to get in the habit of using it at start. So you have to really handle them to get into that habit of using it.
Sure. I agree. And Mequinol, have any of you been using Mequinol? It is available in the market as a 2% cream with kojic acid. Just started using
I also just started using, not much experience.
Yeah, but I think it will be a good blender. My gut feeling says, because we just started using it about 1-2 months ago, so till the patients could come, nobody complained about it. And I think it will be a good blender according to what I have understood with the kojic and the Mequinol. And maybe the tolerability will be good. So for long-term usage, it may be a good option.
I'd like to add niacinamide is very good for under eyes also, because it has got a good hydrating effect and anti-inflammatory. So it is very good for under eye and peri-orbital and periorbital and perioral both.
I just like to add that we are just talking lightening agents for periorbital. So the message should not go to all the listeners that, oh, every time you see a periorbital is just pigmentation, because there are a lot of different reasons why you have periorbital darkness. So just that take-home message.
Sure, but Dr. Madhuri did talk about aging and collagen and laxity,
vascular and
atopic also. Because atopic dermatitis has to be ruled out. Yeah,
she did cover that. Okay, let's move on. Let's move on to the next slide. Post-procedure care. This has become a huge area where we are suddenly flooded with a large number of products, starting with skin repair gels, most of which contain hyaluronic acid. Some of them also contain growth factors. And then they have, other hydrating agents like glycerine, aloe vera. So I have found a couple of them pretty useful. Some of them have vitamin K, which I have found to be particularly useful in, the fractionated lasers or after MNRF. And so would you all agree that these skin repair gels along with the sunscreen are great for the first week of usage and are worth the money that the patient has to spend over them?
They actually reduce the healing time.
And the inflammation.
Inflammation.
Including the new Arnica preparation, certain companies have. They are really wonderful.
Absolutely. And
I like Arnica a lot. It really works well. But the only thing is,
the preparation has to be good and sticky.
It's
but
very sticky.
Also, you have only 1 or 2 preparations which really work. The others don't, honestly. I've found.
Now, in vitamins, coming to preparations in the vitamin C, do you like the anhydrous?
You're freezing.
So you get sunscreens we've ruled out. You get vitamin C creams. You get vitamin C in an anhydrous gel. You get it as a serum. You get it as a with an oil-based serum, and you get the water-based serum. Are you making choices, or do you feel that the percentage is most important?
I prefer the serum because the cream has in it cause a little bit of irritation, and compliance is not good because there is a cream, then on top of that there is a moisturizer, then a sunscreen. So serum is better, absorption is better, and patient compliance is better.
So vitamin C is now very unstable. So I personally prefer the anhydrous if it is available, but there are not too many formulations. So then the second choice is serum. So that's how. And percentage wise, I find 15 to 20 is the is the best. Beyond that, honestly, I don't find it very effective.
That much more effective. Dr. Parna, in a post-procedure care patient, what would be your choice of sunscreen? Inorganic?
Yes, I would definitely prefer
With zinc?
that, because very often in post-procedure patients, the less of chemical ingredients we give them, the better it is.
So skin repair gel and inorganic
Inorganic
sunscreen in the
sunscreen.
day, skin repair gel
Daily
and
wear
a good
also
hydrating
growth
moisturizer at
factors.
night.
I find growth factors also
I
quite
think we are
useful.
slowly moving
Yes.
towards like physical sunscreens. What do you
Yes.
say?
Yes.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Again,
that way.
there's a lot of
Yeah.
these environmental hue
Yeah.
and cry, and we have to be conscious of those things
Yeah.
also.
Because
And
in
So
Australia,
physical
there was a
sun.
paper in Australia, like how
Yes.
many fish, the marine lives were
Yeah.
killed because of
The coral life
sunscreen. Yeah.
and
correct. So
But
we
that's
have to
also
be
because of the
conscious of.
nano sunscreens also.
Yes,
The nano
exactly.
sunscreens are also causing
So
environmental
we
environmental
should,
problems.
damage.
do a bit.
So actually now they're moving away, trying to move away from sunscreens and saying more cover yourself and
Exactly. They're trying
protect.
to
If you're a
promote
real
the habit.
environmentalist,
I know, Malvika, you said earlier nobody uses it, but people are really trying. I think, especially in countries where there's a lot of sun-loving habits, to encourage people to go back to physically covering themselves with barriers rather than put anything on the skin. But also, like Kalpana said, I think we're moving back to an era of physical sunscreens. But what I'm looking at is a new age physical sunscreen, not the
Yeah.
unwieldy physical sunscreens that sportsmen used to use earlier, but something that is physical, inorganic, and yet cosmetically elegant.
Yeah, we'll wait for that day. I'm sure it'll come soon. Next slide. Next slide, please. Okay, so let's look at nutraceuticals. We'll be winding down soon and then take the questions. What's your, I love superoxide dismutase.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think it's a
Agreed.
fabulous antioxidant. It does work. And with 1000 mg vitamin C, probably is a very good starting point when there's photo damage, photo aging, and even in pigmentary conditions. Would you agree? What's your take on the CoQ orally?
Yeah, I give a lot of CoQ orally.
Okay. And what's your take on the combination vitamins which have, it's like cookbook, little vitamin C, a dash of 50 milligram vitamin C, dash of 600 milligram of this, 200 milligram, 40 milligram of, N-acetylcysteine, all those combination pills. Do you think they work? Or do you think we should stick to, concentrated molecules and not go for these
Concentrate is better because the absorption and bioavailability also is important. So when you have this kind of a soup mixture, we really don't know what is getting absorbed and how much is effective. I also like to use a lot of beta carotenes. I find them especially good for photo damage. Along when patients are not able to afford the superoxide,
Yes.
a beta carotene is another
And
option.
especially in younger patients with more acne prone oily skin, I find high dose beta carotene quite useful.
Yeah, with zinc.
But I
Zinc
think
is
the
good,
thing
yeah.
with vitamins is all.
Dr. Aparna, could you be a little
See, one of the things with
more audible?
nutraceuticals and oral skincare vitamins that I
that's
find is that a lot of patients, especially older patients to whom we prescribe it as part of an anti-aging regimen, they're already taking various oral medications, so they're on vitamin D, they're on calcium, they're on sometimes antihypertensives, anti-diabetics. So they are a little reluctant to take a lot of different pure concentrates. Sometimes the one and all combination with multiple ingredients does tend to work. So again, I think it's important to cater it to the patient. I personally love superoxide dismutase, but like Madhuri mentioned, cost is always a factor. So beta carotene, vitamin C, vitamin E are also good antioxidant choices to use in patients who cannot afford the superoxide dismutase.
In fact, there is now they have developed a green dot, nutraceutical which has curcumin, black pepper, green seed, grape seed, grapes, green tea, grape seed, and some vitamin C in it, omega-3, but vegetarian omega-3. They have developed it. It's actually very useful. Actually, very
I
useful.
agree,
And,
Malvika. I also inspired
and it's a good maintenance. I would say it's a good
Yeah.
maintenance.
I would
Because
also
I've
like
seen-
to add is, if you see most of the Westerners now are going to our Ayurvedic preparations. If you see
Yeah.
ashwagandha for your PCOD and your menopause issues, and your curcumin and a lot of those herbs we are going back to. So I'm also naturally inclining towards those,
Yeah.
as we read more.
And in
Agreed.
fact, a lot of herbal teas, which I encourage my patients to have because,
Yeah.
if no one wants to pop a pill for everything, but there are different ways in which these herbs can be delivered. And a herbal tea is a very good way to deliver some of these antioxidants as well.
Yeah, that's a nice, simple way. It also relaxes you. So
Yeah.
it's nice. Yeah. So let's go to the next slide. We've got a good consensus, a balanced consensus on nutraceuticals. So some of the, there are some of these new combinations. I'm sure you're aware of these. They're particularly given for hair, especially telogen effluvium. They're also given for, pigmentary
Pigmentation.
conditions.
Yeah.
So melatonin, citosterol, omega-3, fatty acids, and isoflavones. Yes, there was a question on resveratrol. That's there in the next slide. So resveratrol often comes as a combination. No, just go to the next slide, please. Resveratrol often comes as a combination. Next slide, please. Resveratrol often comes as a combination
I think the slide
with
after
these.
this.
No.
Before this.
That's fine, no problem. So what's your take on melatonin and Dr. Pratik, can we go to the previous slide? Melatonin and the ones I just enumerated. I have used them in this combination with or without resveratrol for some patients who have acute stress related, those who are jet setters, who have very poor sleep cycles
Yeah.
because they work through the night. I find it's worked
Yeah,
there, and I've also found melatonin to help in patients who have insulin resistance
And the
and
system.
who have very poor lifestyles, basically poor lifestyle.
Melatonin is also used for pigmentation. They have tried it
Exactly.
in
Yeah.
pigmentation
Yes.
because
So,
it is a
Lifestyle related, yeah.
antioxidant and a free radical
Yeah.
scavenger. And
Yes.
they've also shown melatonin inhibits alpha MSH.
Yes.
Yes.
So
Yes.
it's given in a dose, I think it's 3 milligrams.
3 milligram at
3
bedtime.
milligram is a
bedtime.
maintenance dose.
Yeah.
and
Maintenance
in
dose.
fact,
Yeah.
there
You
is
could
research.
8.
In fact, there's a lot of research around melatonin topically, which is quite exciting. They're calling it the
Yeah.
sleep cream. And one of the exciting things about melatonin topically is that it's lipophilic. So it's actually penetrating the stratum
Yes.
corneum. And, they say that it can not only scavenge free radicals, but actually also function as a moisturizer and repairing the cells. So I think this is a molecule we're going to see a lot of in the future.
I agree. Let's go to the next slide, in which we're going to talk about diet. I think these are the greens, and a lot of people believe that if you have a good balance of red, orange, yellow, and green in your diet, that works as well, and you don't need nutraceuticals. So I think my take is, diet of course, but I think the nutraceuticals also have a role to play, especially some of the specific ones we talked about. We'll go to the next slide. I think all of you will agree with the diet. And I'd like to come to this section of the do-it-yourself masks, home care products such as for hair and feet, home-based peels, procedures at home, because now with lockdown, maybe extended lockdown, I'm not being able to do procedures. How comfortable are you with your patients, say, trying to do a low-level peel at home?
No, not at all.
Not at all.
Because if the patient is atopic, if the patient's skin barrier is already compromised, I have had patients who come with burns.
True.
And these are the peels they order on Amazon and stuff like that. So I would definitely, secondly is the peel solution can go in their eyes. It can damage their eyes. They don't know all the precautions.
True.
So,
But
there is a peel pad, I tell my patients
those
to use
peel
that.
pads
Mini peel
also
pad.
irritate if
Yeah.
they are already
Yeah,
compromised.
so I tell them to use it
Or they
sparingly
scrub.
under
They scrub it.
after like we advise them once a week or once in 2 weeks, very sparingly. And the day you use that, we tell them not to use any retinoid for a couple of days. and to moisturize the skin properly. So, and if there is any untoward effect, then to inform us.
So the peels which I'm talking about are the ones which I've had patients ordering online, glycolic acid peels. But if you're talking about the peel of masks and all, yes, those are quite
No, I'm talking of the peel pads. You know, they're very
which contain glycolic.
2% of glycolic.
2%
Mandelic, glycolic.
Yeah. But now the
Kojic.
patients have gone a step further.
They ordered bottles.
They're
20%
ordering actually
glycolic
the
peel.
20% glycolic peel and doing it at home.
They're getting derma roller and doing it at home also.
Yeah.
So let me be the devil's advocate over here. Suppose a patient comes to you now in this post-lockdown, as things open up, for an in-person consultation. You can't do a peel on them. They're very keen, whatever the reason is, because you can't take their mask off. At least in Mumbai, you can't. And they say, Doc, can you recommend a low-level peel that I can do at home? And you can give me all the instructions. Or some doctors are even giving video-assisted instructions. Do you think this is a good idea?
No.
And do you think a low-level retinol peel may not be a bad idea? I'm being the devil's advocate.
I wouldn't advocate it. I think it's better to work with counseling the patients on what topicals or higher they could use. Work with
like a 6% glycolic, or
ask to use a 6% glycolic.
Exactly.
Or twice a week, 6% glycolic, and twice a week a retinol. So you're rotating both on different days.
That makes more
for
sense.
the day's gap. Would Dr. Madhuri
Yes,
agree
yes,
as
I
well?
agree.
Wonderful. So let's move to the next slide. Home-based care, these are all these sheet masks, charcoal. You can see over there those two brands which have the facial kits. They have little sachets. Actually, I picked them up to check what they've got. And they've got little sachets, 5 steps in them, including ending with the mask to do a little kit facial at home yourself. So there's lots of things coming out. And on the right, you'll see this hair mask. It has to be applied into your wet hair, shampooed, massaged in and removed like a shark cap and rinsed off. And it gives fabulous results. So I think we shouldn't disregard them, but I think if we educate ourselves.
Yeah, we should know what.
No, we
Tell our
need
patients
to.
how to use them.
Yeah,
we
need to educate.
We need
We
to
have
move
to
with the
educate
times.
ourselves because we have
need
to
to
tell
move with the
them what
times
to be. And
ourselves.
which ways they'll use it. So we have to be.
So we have to know stuff.
Sure. So I would like to just reinforce that today with cosmetic consults being virtual and exactly what we said, increasing the strength of topicals, we can, and doing pre-procedures prep, we can push back some procedures. And would you all agree that even if a patient comes for a teleconsult now, eventually an in-person consult can happen, so not to worry. Or if you're already in your clinics, you can do an in-person consult the first time, but the second and third time can be a teleconsult till you call them in for an in-person again. So you can use teleconsults to your advantage and still keep the patient with you and help them through some home care without, just writing it off. I think this will be a nice balance. Next slide is nail care. I think we can, the only thing I wanted to ask here is, would you be discouraging your patients to visit their salons too soon and too often?
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
No.
Wonderful.
No.
Next slide.
Especially in Bombay.
Yeah.
Especially in Bombay.
Yeah.
And I think it's almost 4:30. So do you think that in this era, social media would really help us to tide over this situation that we're in?
Yes.
I agree.
And would you think Instagram is good for millennials and
Yes.
Facebook and Twitter are better for the older age group?
In fact,
So we need to have all these three?
you need to have all three. In fact,
Madhuri?
yeah. In fact, even the older generation or the mature crowd is there on Insta. My mom and dad are there on Insta. So I don't think there is any demarcation about age. Everybody loves different formats are there, but you should be there on Insta, Facebook, Twitter for sure. So you're covering all this spectrum, and as much as possible educate rather than promote. Educate your patients.
Absolutely.
Make your presence
not
felt,
market,
yes.
but not market yourself, but make an impact with good quality education. Wonderful.
I'm
Lovely
loving some of the
message,
videos Dr. Aparna
Next slide.
shares.
Okay, wonderful. Aparna to share with me too. So we're all going to slowly get back into action. And I think Dr. Kalpana, you've started.
Yeah.
And
Yes,
what has been your response so far? And
Yes and no, because I started, then all of a sudden there was a spurt, and then we are in the red zone. So I just go start my lasers and come back once or twice a week. Patients are also scared. We are also scared to meet, and even at the clinic also I do mostly teleconsultation.
Okay.
So, but the fact that I'm going there is like, people keep asking, so very soon we are going to start. We tell them, so we're not started full-fledged yet.
So you're keeping yourself accessible.
Yeah, and then secondly, I have to go to the hospital any which ways. That the day I go to the hospital, I drop by at my clinic. We have to prepare a staff also. We have to keep the place sanitized. Doing that, the rigmarole of preparing the place is itself taking so much of toll on us. So
Absolutely.
yeah.
Absolutely. Sure. So I think we're coming to the last slide, which was on teleconsultation tips, which I think we can take in the question and answer. So Dr. Prateek, we'll go back to the screen now. Thank you, panelists. It was wonderful. You all were so forthright, were so you were very sharing in actually what you do in your clinics and how you approach. And I think it's added huge value for a lot of us who have been listening in. And let's go to the questions. Should we do that? So
Yes, madam.
the first one is, do we have enough time for questions?
Yes, madam. We can.
The first one was medications for post-acne erythema. Medication, I think they mean topicals for post-acne erythema. Dr. Madhuri?
Hello?
Dr. Madhuri, are you there?
Yeah.
Medication, topicals for post-acne erythema.
So for post-acne erythema, one is what the barrier function repair. So I definitely like my moisturizer and sunscreen, and I would like my azelaic acid here. I like to use a little bit of azelaic acid. It really helps, but short contact. So I see an improvement in that. Other than that, these are the few things, and then I go for my lasers. I do my IPL a lot for these patients.
You can add niacinamide also. Niacinamide to
vitamin K. Retinol with
Niacinamide.
vitamin K works also very well, isn't it?
Yeah,
With niacinamide in the day
Yeah.
and maybe retinol with vitamin K at night. That could be one option. Dr. Parna, role of ivermectin in rosacea.
So, I mean, there's topical ivermectin. There are studies that it's helping better than metronidazole in rosacea. I personally haven't used topical ivermectin in rosacea yet. I find that brimonidine gel works quite well in rosacea, especially in the extremely erythematous stage. But there are reports that 0.1% ivermectin works better than metronidazole in rosacea.
Yeah,
I have
tried
used.
ivermectin,
I have used, yeah.
Yeah, it does work.
I use
rosacea.
ivermectin cream. It does work very well.
does
I
work.
don't use brimonidine
Yeah.
because I found a lot of rebound
Exactly.
erythema. So it's
Absolutely.
absolutely not my favorite thing, and I never use it. I've
And
given it up.
Even if you tell them to use it socially, it becomes
Yeah.
so addictive.
And they get so addicted, and the moment
Yeah.
they stop, it's almost like a steroid,
Yeah.
addiction.
Worse. It's worse.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. So I think no fragrance SLS paraben was covered silicone free. Brands, sorry, retinol brands we cannot mention, but Dr. Madhuri, you were talking about CoQ10. So can you suggest any oral products? I think you can't talk about brands, but
Yeah.
yes, oral vitamin C.
They can write to me.
Yeah. So actually at the end of this, I would like all of you to give your email addresses so that some of these can be taken offline, such as brands for retinol, brands for CoQ oral. Oral vitamin C, 1000 mg vitamin C. I think it's one of my top favorites, goes with almost every
Yes.
prescription
Yeah,
for
mine
anti-aging
too.
and
Exactly.
pigmentation. Dr. Parna, Dr. Nina?
Yeah,
Not
I
in all my prescriptions.
2000
No, for anti-aging and pigmentation.
For pigmentation, yes.
Okay. And do you recommend any cetyl alcohol, sterile alcohol cleansing gels for
Those
beard
are
cleansing?
for beard cleansing.
What?
For beard cleansing. I think for beard cleansing, I would more like a foaming face wash so it dislodges the cellular debris rather than these very gentle, which would sort of stick onto the skin.
Maybe a little glycolic acid.
Glycolic and salicylic also.
And
Lactic
Salicylic acid foaming
Yeah.
gels.
could also do. Can you suggest some strong, effective products for the medial aspect of the thighs and underarm, so flexural pigmentation? Would you agree it's retinol containing creams?
Glycolic also?
12%
Glycolic acid.
glycolic, 12%
Yeah.
glycolic, alpha-arbutin,
Even
combination of
tranexamic also can be given. Tranexamic.
tranexamic, yes. Even kojic acid would be irritated
Yeah,
with.
yeah.
Okay, licorice as well. Can you suggest a good hyaluronic and retinol containing good cream for daily use? I think that will have to be offline because we can't suggest a brand. This is an interesting question from Dr. Pallavi Rathi. The skincare regimen for a pre-teen age group, say around 10 to 12 years. Dr. Parna, because you were talking on general skincare at any age, pre-teen age group skincare regimen around 10 to 12 years.
Dental cleanser, preteen, the preteen age group still hasn't reached Sabaki. So we don't really need, we don't really need a cleanser, which is going to be an oil attacking cleanser. So I find a gentle cleanser, cetyl alcohol, sterile alcohol containing cleanser with definitively a sunscreen, and a mild sunscreen, which is more lotion based and therefore does not irritate the skin, is something that I recommend to my patients when they come in, or when usually it's mothers who come and ask about their children, saying that they're going out for classes or they're playing. If they're closer to the age of 12, then I tell them to watch out for early blackheads, but that might appear on the forehead, or little breakouts of acne, in which case you might change the face wash to something containing lactic acid in a slightly older patient.
Anybody wants to add?
So I also like to use a 2% salicylic if they are comedogenic and they are just showing signs of seborrhea. I find that very comfortable as a prescription and easy to do for patients without irritating their skin. So I give it like on and off.
Actually, in a pre-teen age group, I also like to give lactobionic acid face washes, or lactic acid face washes, because not all of them can, some may be atopic, some may be not, some eventually may develop a bit of acne. So I find these
Lactic
molecules
acid,
useful.
yeah.
And I think basically for a pre-teen, it has to be matte. I don't know any teen, unless they have extremely dry skin, who likes products that are shiny. So they like anything that is matte. And so anything which is matte, they will take to very easily, take positively. Yes. How effective are collagen shots for overall health of skin, which many companies are promoting these days, Dr. Madhuri? Collagen shots?
So basically you have to look at the ingredient. It should be collagen 1 and 3 because most of them sometimes are talking of collagen and 1 and 2. Secondly, there's marine and bovine also preparations. There are very few preparations which are really effective in collagen shots. So it should be well scientifically studied, supported with documents. That's where you pick up, because otherwise you have a lot of collagen available and you just pick up and patients are gulping it down. So look at, and bovine is supposed to be more effective than marine. So it's each to his own. So look at these elements when you're looking at collagen shots, and it has to be taken at least for 3 to 4 months for it to be really effective. You cannot expect a result, in my experience, within a month or two as they claim. And you have to do it at least for 6-8 months. You cannot just give up.
Yeah, I use a lot of collagen. I use one which is 1 and 3, and then it has to be with antioxidants in it. And like
there's no volume coming.
Months. They should take it for at least 3 months and slowly taper it. But usually people, those who like it and they get used to it, they want to take it for longer. They take for 6 to 9 months. So like, you hear me?
So
Yes, madam. You're right.
yeah.
So like I do give collagen powder, and yeah, you are right, Madhuri. Bovine is more effective, though the taste is horrible. But it is more most
Otherwise,
of the
you have the bone broth, which you make at home.
Yeah.
So, actually, bovine tablets are also available.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you have to take
so
4 of them. The quantity.
Yeah.
4 twice a day you have to take, and the big tablet,
the shots also you have to take around 2 to 3 grams. If you take less, it won't be
right. Tablets.
Yeah.
5,000 international units for the shots. Okay. Yeah. Dr. Aparna, the role of resveratrol, can you tell us?
I'm sorry.
The role of oral resveratrol.
I'm not able to hear you at all, Malvika.
Oral resveratrol.
Yeah, oral resveratrol.
Sorry, can you type it to me or someone? I just can't hear it all. Or maybe.
Okay, sure. Till then, I'll, Madhu, you could take it since you heard me. So oral resveratrol, they're saying for hair, helps in prolonging the anagen phase. And this is what I read in one of the articles. I don't know how much that is true, but that's what they're saying. And for the skin, oral resveratrol, I mean, it's antioxidant and pigmentary processes and all of that. Sorry, did you get it, Aparna?
Yeah, I did. So resveratrol is believed to be a scavenging antioxidant. So they say that it's good in combination with preventive antioxidants like vitamin C. Grape C extract also contains resveratrol, and it's got quite a good benefit in hair problems actually,
That's what
especially
I said, yes.
telogen effluvium, acute
Yeah.
androgen alopecia. It's also supposed to have some sunscreening properties if you use it along with beta carotene is an oral sunscreen, but I've not heard of anyone prescribing it standalone. It's usually in a combination antioxidant.
Or you can have a lot of red wine.
We'll do that in the next trip.
Which is high glycemic, but once in a while it's good. They say 30 ml of red wine every day.
Every day.
Good. That's what the Europeans do, and look at them. Okay, so please suggest brands for peptides and growth factors. Okay, that's from Dr. Parul Kote. You can do that offline. We'll give you our email addresses. Intravenous glutathione usage, Dr. Ratan Koluru. Any particular aspect of intravenous glutathione? I think it's been discussed a lot. I think we're all in favor of sublingual. You prefer sublingual? Okay.
Yes.
How is astaxanthin as an anti-aging?
Yeah, I use
find it good.
astaxanthin. Yeah, I use it.
I think polypodium with astaxanthin and
It's a
collagen
good
peptides with
combination.
astaxanthin seems
It's
to
a good
have some
combination.
benefits,
Yeah,
isn't
yeah.
it?
Yeah.
Okay. And lastly is please explain skin boosters. And one more thing, Dr. Richa Shinde, a lot of patients ask for glow. So if they don't have any pigmentation issue, then what should be prescribed for glow per se? Skin boosters?
Yes. And a good antioxidant.
Sunscreen,
Okay, so
everything,
with
whatever we
collagen.
talked about. Do everything what we
Overall
talked about.
skincare regimen with
all
a
of
good
the above. So
dietary change.
I think when patients are asking for skin glow, they want one tone and texture. They want a good light reflex.
and they want
a
smoothness.
We were all in unison. And they want to have it forever.
Yeah.
And the vasculature should be uniform.
And so my take to them is, I can do it for you, but it's a high maintenance job. So
and
if
Mahrukh, very often it's a euphemism for seeking more skin lightening. So it's necessary to delayer the patient to understand what they really want.
yeah. But I think the thing is that we've got to tell them that any skin, however good or bad, needs maintenance. And that's why I brought that up. So I think maintenance is the key. And for maintenance, you need to have a strong prescription. And that's where, once again, whatever we discussed is very important. And he brings back the cosmetic consult back into focus. And I think we need to, in synopsis, dialogue better, carry our patients forward.
Know your products.
Know your products. Know your pharmacology. Know how to mix and match. Have a balanced prescription. Give a realistic plan to your patients. Add procedures where you can. And you also have to have a good diet, have to be happy, content, 30 ml of red wine. And you have to have good friends like I do. And you have to be content.
We have to do some exercise also. There has to be some exercise.
So you won't believe it.
Exercise.
You won't believe it. There's a doctor, Sudesh Chaudhary, who's asked us any yoga exercise which is better for face. And we just said exercise.
Dr. Kalpana is going to answer that.
There are certain spatial exercises which is good for the skin, which we'll take it up in some other webinar.
I think it will be Kapalbhati, Brastika,
Anulom Vilom.
Anulom
Vilom.
and this one, Brahmari.
Brahmari, Bhastrika, and Om.
That's what I said.
And Om.
And
Om.
Dr. Kalpana will tell us a little bit next time on Buddhist chanting. And most importantly is to have good friends and to be happy.
Yes.
Be happy.
Which is why today all 5 of us are glowing and gleaming.
And we can't stop grinning.
Wonderful. So I think with this we come to an end, and thank you ladies for giving me all your precious time. And I think we've We look great in blue, and I think we'll keep up the good work we're doing. And we've got a good comment as well. Thank you, everybody, for listening in. And thank you, Cadila, once more for getting us together. We thoroughly enjoyed ourselves, and I hope you have too. Thank you, delegates. We really enjoyed answering all your questions. Back to you, Dr. Pratik Patel.
Pratik.
Thank you, madam.
Yeah, Doctor. Good evening. This is Lakshmi Narayana here. I'm here.
Oh, sorry.
You can able to see, notice me in the web. Yeah, it's a wonderful discussion. Women and blue. That's a wonderful. Generally, men in blue
Yes.
in the cricket and
Black.
the women in blue in the webinar today. Excellent, wonderful tips has been given, and you are trying to make the India looks beautiful. Indian men and women wants to look beautiful. Yes, now you are already at the edge of the looking beautiful. You made further day. The day made beautiful day. Your tips and the wonderful. Experience and the knowledge shared with all across the medical fraternity is wonderful. And thanks for invitees and responding to our invitation. And today the subject is on a cosmetic consultant and strengthening the prescription. Not only that, there are many tips have been followed and enriched the knowledge to all of us. And today, a special word of thanks to Dr. Malavika Kohli, chairperson and moderator. So wonderfully dealt all the across the panelists. And thanks to Dr. Neena Madani and Kalpana Sarangi, Dr. Kalpana Sarangi, Dr. Madhuri Agarwal, Dr. Aparna Santanam for expert panelists who have shared excellent knowledge and parted their subject related to the rest of the panelists. I hope everybody is enriched and more knowledgeable. Now, going forward, they will be practicing your tips, and they will be getting a better benefit and serving the society. So thanks, doctors, those who have participated, and today's participation almost close to 150. And I believe doctors are close to 150, and in a short time that many doctors all across the country has joined and learned your subject related to the cosmetology. And then thank you, my senior leaders, Mr. Amit Admira, Mr. O.P. Singh, President, and both have encouraged us to conduct this kind of a program. And with that, with their help, we are meeting you and one button shot to all across the country and in one platform. So that's a wonderful technology that we are exercising and experiencing. Thank you, Dr. Pratik, coordinating all the medical fraternity. So thanks one and all, and thank all my colleagues. Thanks my departments. Thank you.
Please
Okay,
take
madam.
everybody's email address, and you can send
Sure,
it to all our 5 email addresses, and you can send it to the participants, so that
Okay,
if they
madam.
have any offline queries, then we would be happy to answer their mails. We're happy to do that.
Sure, madam. Okay, madam. So once again, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you,
And,
Malvika, for bringing
Thank you,
all of us
Malvika.
together.
Yeah. Bye.
That was fun.
Thank you.
We had a
We'll
great
all meet
time.
offline now.
Yeah.
Have a great time. See you offline.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
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 Bye, Dr.
Bye.
Pratik.
Bye. Thank you,
Dr.
Kadil.
Thank you,
Thank
Dr. Pratik. Thank you,
Thank you,
Dr.
madam.
Pratik.
Thank you, madam. Thank you so much. Bye.
Thank you, one and all. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.